Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. I am the Ginger Wonder, and tonight we're going to do a little bit something different than what we've been doing. This is going to be my Poketalk with me, the Ginger Wonder. So, Pokemon is one of my favorite games of all time. It's actually the first major video game that I ever played. Um, and beaten all the way through. And so it does hold a special place in my heart. I started all the way with a red version back in 1998. I got it right as soon as it came out over here in America, maybe about a month afterwards for the original Game Boy Pocket. Um, and it's just something that I've always enjoyed. There was a period of time where I stopped playing it, stopped really paying too much attention to it. But as I've gotten older, as I've had a kid, I don't know. It's very family friendly, and it definitely has drawn me back. And there are a lot of things that have changed in it that I really really enjoy. One of the things I have noticed though is that it has a pretty decent barrier for entry now. Meaning, if you didn't start with it and kind of get a basic feel of how it worked then, um, it's only added more mechanics and more things in order to increase the playability and increase the competitive nature of it moving forward. So that's one of the things that I really want to get into now. Is I just want to take you through this process and take you through all of the aspects of it. Nothing too crazy, but anything that you'll need to know what if you decide to play it competitively. And one of the best things about it is that with Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield, it's become easier than ever to actually get into competitive Pokemon, raise competitive Pokemon, and then be able to start battling online against people and pretty much hold your own as long as you have a decent strategy in place. So that is one of the cooler things about this newer generation. Now, I'm not going to be playing the newer generation here on stream. What we're going to be using is Pokemon Showdown, a completely free website where you can simulate Pokemon battles. You build your Pokemon from scratch. So you take any of the almost 900 Pokemon now, and from scratch, you build them up and you decide what attacks they get. You decide what items they could have attached to them. Minor things as far as how they're raised and how their stats are going to be distributed appropriately. And again, this right now is I want to make it newcomer friendly. So I'm going to start from the beginning. We're going to go over some of the basics, and then we're going to start implementing in some of the mechanics that had gone into effect over time. So first, we're going to go to Pokemon Showdown, and here I actually have a team that I have built. This is for the most recent competitive season of Pokemon. It's okay. I'm just trying to play around with it, see what works, see what strategies might stick to it. But instead of doing that, what we're going to do is we are going to start brand new. And we're actually going to go back to the first generation. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh wait, go back team letter, new team, select a format. We're gonna go all the way to what's it? Gen 1. Ah, Gen 1 Stadium. And let's see. So here we have your standard Pokemon. We're gonna go ahead and sort them. Um, this is by their usage essentially within the metagame. So, I mean, if you're familiar with it, you know, the starters, which would be Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle, not in that order, all the way through their most evolved forms of, uh, of Charizard, Blastoise, and Venusaur. You also have some of the other notable ones along the way. Of course, Pikachu, the most recognizable Pokemon probably on the planet. Definitely the face of the franchise. Some other really notable ones. Eevee is in here. Let's see here if we could find Eevee. I believe they would be. The coolest part about Eevee is that if you introduce certain stones, that's how they end up evolving into their respective forms. So Eevee right here. Now, what the main draw to Pokemon, at least to me when I was growing up, it was very interesting going into the battles and doing type matchups. So as you see right here, we have Eevee as a normal type Pokemon. Of course, we're gonna go ahead and do Charmander. Always my favorite when starting out. Right here, Charmander. It is a fire type. As you can see, they learn different attacks from different move types. So one of the interesting things there is that you would do you if it gets to a high enough level, it'll learn flamethrower, and it's a pretty powerful attack with good accuracy. That's the next part about it here. As far as type matchups, you also have to worry about how strong your attacks are going to be, just on a base level, and then also how accurate your attacks are going to be. So with 100%, this should hit every single time. About the only time it would not hit would be if you had your accuracy lower due to another attack. And so as the battles go on, they kind of play off each other like that. Like most RPGs, there are different types of attacks. Some that actually do damage, and some that take different effects. So if you look right here, it can learn rest. With rest, it will fall asleep, so it will be rendered useless for 2 turns while it's sleeping, but it restores its health, and any status that it may have incurred along the way gets completely wiped away in favor of the sleep status effect. Um, so that's the first thing that we look into here: type matchups, and then the different types of attacks and moves that your Pokemon can learn and you may come up against when battling. So when building a team, you learn pretty quickly that it's important to get plenty of Pokemon of all different types so that you can battle the trainers along the way and learn exactly good strategies on how to defeat them. So if they come out with a Pokemon that at least your first one may not be strong against, you've got some more types in the back with some other different types of moves and some coverage so that you can switch them out and take on that other Pokemon. Um, Now, as far as the actual first game is concerned, that's really most of it. The only other thing that comes into it are these, which are its stats, its general stats. As you see, its base health, HP is health points, attack is, of course, an attack, defense, special, and speed. Special here indicates it's actually based on the typing of the move itself. So fire would be considered a special typing, along with water, along with grass, along with ice, and then the attack stat would be based on normal type attacks or fighting attacks. I believe flying is also one. Again, there are several there. I definitely encourage you to look up the full list if you are interested in this. Um, Now, you may see these things here and say, huh, EVs and DVs. What are those? Well, EVs are very interesting because what they are effort values. Now, that means whenever you are battling a Pokemon in the wild, it will actually grant you, in addition to regular experience towards leveling your Pokemon up, it will also grant you another type of experience point based on the Pokemon that it is and based on its stats. Um, so, and again, I don't have the whole list in front of me right now, but if it's a faster Pokemon, you're going to get more in the speed stat than you would say in the defensive stat. because if it's faster, it's generally not going to be as defensive or bulky. If it has a higher HP or defense stat, you're probably not going to get as many as you would if it were a speedier type Pokemon. And the way that it works in the first generation, I believe, is that you can have up to a maximum amount of 252 of these. Each Pokemon, depending on its type and its level, or I think it's just its species. Excuse me. I believe it's based on its species and its stats on its own. Determine how much you get into that slot. And this one, each of them can get a maximum of 252. So that means your stats are going to differ immensely. Uh, Charmander, let's see here. Let's start out at right at Oak's Laboratory at level 5. Okay, this is the first one that you would get, and it doesn't have any of these EVs at the moment. So this is its base stat right here. It says 39. Now 39, as you see, that's actually grows based on the amount. Um, it's not 39. It's usually at about 6 or 7 whenever you start out. However, the more you actually battle Pokemon, the higher those stats get. So not only do you get experience by doing this, your Pokemon also grows in its specific stats based on the Pokemon that it's battled. So it's almost getting a different type of experience that determines exactly how powerful it's going to be when it gets to a certain level. Um, Now, DVs over here are, I believe they are definite values or determined values, and that's based on the Pokemon itself. So you can kind of think of it like genes, like how we all have DNA inside, and that can help determine how we are going to be naturally at certain things. So if I come from a family of people who do a lot of physical labor, if I also work at building labor in my genetic code, I'm probably going to be better predisposed to to do that. If I come from a family of athletes, I'm probably going to have better athleticism than somebody who doesn't have that. It's kind of the nature versus nurture type thing, and obviously they take that into account as well. Because while you can have 15, you can be as good as you possibly can be. If you don't train yourself up enough, you're going to get surpassed by somebody who has trained that far. So it doesn't, again, it's not the end all be all. It's actually a really, really good mix in between how you raise your Pokemon and how naturally good they are. Now, in the first generation, um, basically what you caught is what you got. So you can't really affect those DVs any further than just by catching newer ones. And everything was really hidden in the game and in the mechanics. So unless you knew exactly what you were getting and you were meticulously tracking it, you wouldn't really know what your DVs are. You just kind of play and you just go along. And again, this came out when I was 8, when I was 7, about to be 8, and I got it on my 8th birthday. I did not track this one bit at that age. I had no clue of this. That's how well it's hidden. They don't tell you anything about it in the actual base game. These are all things that people have learned about it from just going through it and from meticulously tracking and battling. So I definitely want to give a big shout out to everyone who has done that and helped us realize what we have about this game. Um, Now that's about everything that we have to really say in regards to the first generation of Pokemon. That's more or less how deep the well runs. Um, so what I'm going to go ahead and do now is go to the second generation. Now, Second generation is very interesting. As you can see right here, everything is still the same as far as that's concerned that we've gone over. Um, as you can see here, though, we have items. Now, items just put on a new sort of. They really added to the flow of the game and how it works. Because with that, we've gotten certain things like leftovers, which is one of the most popular competitive items that you can use because the holder restores 1/16 of its maximum health every turn, at the end of every turn. And you think 1/16, that's not too big. But if you have really defensive Pokemon that have bolstered their defenses even further within battle, I mean, 1/16 can make a pretty big difference. So again, that's just one example. There are also the black belt, which makes fighting type attacks be even stronger. Black glasses, same thing for dark type attacks. Bright powder. Now the holder is any attack against the holder. The accuracy of that attack is lowered at that point. Um, so yeah, they definitely have quite a few quite a few different items here that can change the dynamics of a match and of a battle. And as it's gone on, it's gotten even crazier. There are a lot of interesting things there. The second thing that's really affected battles at this point um, have been weather. Weather was actually introduced in this in the first time via attacks. So Charmander would be able to learn, I believe, Sunny Day right here. Sunny Day. For 5 turns, intense sunlight powers up fire type moves. So you can imagine if you use Sunny Day, then its flamethrower that we just talked about gets even stronger from there. So it powers it up by I think probably about 1.2 or so, the same amount as an item. If not 1.2, then it might be as up to 1.5. So it makes it that much stronger than it would have been beforehand. So it's definitely a good move. Now, what Sunny Day also does, which is really interesting, it makes the attack Solar Beam, which is oh, I don't believe he learned Solar Beam. Well, that's definitely a good thing because that's a little bit broken in this generation. But we can go to our helpful friend Executor, and they definitely learn Solar Beam. And what that does is it charges in one turn and it fires off in the next turn. But as you see here, there's no charge in sunlight. So a very popular strategy is to employ Sunny Day if you know you're going to get knocked out soon, or even if you're fully healthy and just do Sunny Day, switch out, bring in your Executor, and at that point, use Solar Beam because that is a 120 power attack. So that's massive. As you saw, Flamethrower was 90 with 100% accuracy. This is 120 with 100% accuracy. And where normally it would take 2 turns, now you've reduced it to 1. So you have greatly increased your damage output for that particular Pokemon for at least about 2 extra turns. 2 or 3 turns at that point. So again, it's very interesting. A lot of cool mechanics here. The next one that it brings in is rain, which can be brought about by Rain Dance. And which of course Executor can't learn. But with Rain Dance, it does the same thing as with Sunny Day, but with rain. So it makes water moves stronger. But the other type that it has synergy with is the electric type. Because Thunder, where it is normally a let's see Thunder is normally it's a one-turn move, but it usually has about 70% accuracy. With Rain Dance, it gives it 100% accuracy. So as you see, this weather, it does add a whole new dynamic to the whole situation. Now, one of the other really cool things about this generation is it expanded upon the non-attacking moves. One of the bigger ones being Belly Drum. What Belly Drum does is it cuts down your health in half, but it makes your attack extremely high. So it raises it up to as high as it could possibly go. So that's a huge risk versus reward situation there. That's why a lot of times people would pair a Belly Drum with a berry of some kind. Let me see. The best one in this case would probably be the Goldberry, which would restore its HP by 30 when it's at half health or less. So right there, it just makes it so much stronger and better when you pair it with items, when you pair it with certain weather implements. It just encourages thoughtful team building and good ideas of um, synergistic strategy, if you will. Now, that pretty much sums it up for the second generation. Which it also added. Sorry, by a side note, it also added two new types to this mix: Steel type and Dark type. Okay, and what they did is they really made it so that Psychic type wasn't as dominant as it was beforehand, because the only other type that it had against it was a Ghost type, and there was only one Ghost type in the game in the first generation. So they decided to make it so that Dark type now was also effective against it, and Steel type was resistant to it. So yeah, and that brings us on to the third generation. Now, the third generation is referred to as kind of the renaissance of Pokemon, where it more closely resembles what we see as Pokemon today. And the third generation, that is where we start with abilities. Now, abilities are amazing. Um, what abilities did for the game at this point is really just encourage it to be so much more strategic, and it made Pokemon that you might think wouldn't be so well. They wouldn't be as competitively viable, and it made them so that they had to be on your team, and it's something that you needed in order to be successful. Aside from abilities, it also added the ability for, or the it also added the double battle mechanic, which is what's currently used in the competitive Pokemon scene today under the VGC rules, the Video Game Championship. So double battles, it's pretty self-explanatory. You take two Pokemon, and you battle them at the same time against your opponent's two Pokemon. Um, so this added another layer of strategy to it. So now you have to think about, okay, so what Pokemon are they going to bring in with them? What Pokemon do they have in the back? What are their abilities? What am I doing right now that could be used against me potentially later on? It just created this whole other side of things that made it extremely entertaining. Not only to play but to watch too, in a lot of ways. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch this out for what do we have here? And hello, anyone joining us today. I definitely appreciate you tuning in to the Ginger Wonder channel. We are doing a Poketalk right now. Um, right now, I am going to go to Mightyena. which on its own, it's I don't know, it's an all right move. It gets some decent attacks, decent coverage, I suppose. Um, but what it what it really has working for it is its ability, Intimidate. On a switch in, this Pokemon lowers the attack of the other side by one stage. And this is, if you're in a double battle, this is not just the one Pokemon, it's both Pokemon on the other side of the field. So this Pokemon, which again, it's not terrible, and it gets pretty decent stats. Um, if you bring it in now, it's lowering the other person's attack. So you don't even have to use an attack for that. Its ability is doing that for you. And that's what I mean by an added layer of strategy to the whole situation. So now you have a Mightyena with Intimidate, and then let's say you give it the Black Glasses, has Dark type attacks. So now you give it Crunch, you give it Shadow Ball. Actually, you don't even need Shadow Ball if you've got Crunch, if I'm being perfectly honest. You go ahead and give it, let's say, not Counter. What else do we have here? Give it Toxic. Give it Rest, and then give it Taunt. And the type of Pokemon you have right now is one that can actually do decent dark damage. It can poison another Pokemon, and then it can rest and heal up anything that it's gotten. And then with Taunt, the other Pokemon can't use any status attacks or status moves for the next 3 turns. So if it wants to rest, if it wants to Toxic, if it wants to do anything to bolster its own strengths, it can't at this point. It has to attack. There's no other choices there. So yeah, and again, I don't claim to be an expert on Pokemon by any means, but this is just something that I don't know. I've always enjoyed growing up. As you can see, it's very very interesting. One other thing that they introduced that I didn't really get too far into in the last one was the shiny factor. This doesn't really have much of an impact on the gameplay and competitive on that end of it, but it gives you the option of trying to look for these rarer Pokemon and getting them on your team. At this point, it's more of a bragging sort of situation than anything else. Um, all right, now let's see here. So yeah, that is the third generation. Now in the fourth generation, if I'm being perfectly honest, unfortunately, I did not play this generation too terribly much. This is in some of the years where I kind of stepped out of it. But it did have one very, very notable change that really did affect it a lot moving forward, and that is the separation of physical and special attacks. As you see now, they have special attacks, special defense, attack, and defense. So now what it's done is made it so that if you have a fighting move, great, you can use fighting move. Most of them are going to be physical, but there are going to be those special fighting attacks as well. The notable one being, let's see, Focus Blast, I believe. Let's see, yeah, Focus Blast. And who gets that? None other than Lucario. Or actually, Aura Sphere, excuse me, Aura Sphere is the notable one. But it also gets Focus Blast here, which is a little bit stronger, but a little bit less accurate. So again, it's got pretty interesting trade offs there. So that's the main thing I've noticed, at least about this one. Um, as far as the game itself, they really upgraded a lot of the story elements of it. They made it so that you could catch more legendary Pokemon, which has always been a very interesting part of it. And then they also added, I believe it's in this generation, they added Hail. Um, which I neglected to mention in the second generation, which is when they added Sandstorm. And basically, what that does, Sandstorm at least, is it whips up a Sandstorm, and any Pokemon that is not Rock, Ground, or Steel gets damage every turn. Um, with Hail, it's the same thing, except it changes that to every Pokemon besides an Ice type Pokemon. And now that's also where a lot of their abilities get in as well. So one of my favorites here is in this generation is Abomasnow. Abomasnow. I don't know why. As you can see, it's not an amazing Pokemon, but I just really love it. I really like the design. I think it's cool. Snow and, or grass and ice. So interesting typing. Really weak to fire. Really weak to fighting and flying and a few other types. But again, I like it. Comes with a snow warning ability. So it summons hail at this point. Now, what that does is it makes Blizzard 100% effective, similar to Rain Dance and Thunder. So yeah, it's really interesting. It's really interesting. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go on to Generation 5. Again, I know I'm going through a lot of things. Please bear with me on it. I really do appreciate it. Generation 5, I believe, here. And in Generation 5, if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm not quite sure what they added on here. I think it's mostly just the addition of new attacks, new abilities, new Pokemon, as they do with every generation. Some of the notable Pokemon on Generation 5, or one of the notable ones, is Gothitelle. And she has the Shadow Tag ability, which is really interesting because what it would do is if she's in, it makes it so that any other Pokemon that's also in cannot switch out unless they also have that ability, or there's an attack that allows them to switch out, which I don't even think they added at this point. So it made Shadow Tag really difficult to play around. Um, and there are a lot of shenanigans there too. One of the interesting things here, she doesn't learn it, but you might pair Gothitelle with a let's see here, with a Gengar, and what you've just been able to do is set up Perish Song. So they're trapped in there. What Perish Song does is it makes it so that every active Pokemon will faint in 3 turns as long as they stay in. So without Gothitelle, your strategy is just, remove them, take them out. But with Gothitelle in there, you can't. You have no choice. They are stuck. They will faint at the end of 3 turns unless Gothitelle is taken out. Let's see. Now, another interesting move that was added, again, I apologize, neglected to mention in the second generation, was Protect. What Protect did is it made it so that the effects of the attack that was being used on that Pokemon doesn't take place. So, um, again, if you use Sand Attack to lower their accuracy, it does not do that. If you attack them, they do not take damage. It's one of the things that really makes it a lot more of a competitive type situation. Kind of adds to the mind games of one player to another. In the third generation, they added Detect, which is the fighting version of that. Again, does basically the same thing at that point. Just protects your Pokemon from the effects of that attack. Now, we're going to go ahead and get into the next generation, which is Generation 6, which I recently actually played through. Generation 6 is the first time that they actually added three-dimensionally rendered sprites. So they no longer were just the two-dimensional little buggers that were there on the screen with you um, whenever playing on a dimly lit Game Boy. This was running off the power of a Nintendo 3DS, and as such, you could fully see exactly what the Pokemon looked like, which was very, very cool at that time. Um, One of the things that was added in this generation is, let's see, let me see, what's it? Psychic terrain, I believe, was added in this, or the ability to have terrains was added in this generation. Mm. Oh, I guess psychic terrain was not. Let's see if we have. Yes, misty terrain, however, was added in this generation. And what misty terrain does, let's go ahead and use Xerneas here, which was the legendary Pokemon for this this specific game, or one of the specific games, Pokemon X. And what the terrains did is similar to what the weather did. Similar, but very different. Let's see here. Misty terrain would. It's 5 turns, and no status could be used. No status moves at all. As you see here, too, there's also a new typing, fairy typing, specifically to counter dragons, to kind of put a curb on fighting and on dark types. Because those are the ones that they noticed on the 5 generations prior, or I suppose 4 generations prior, had kind of dominated the game, and it was really hard to try and play around them. So they used this kind of cap it off, and since then they have not added any new types, and they've come out with 2 generations. But misty terrain, 5 turns, cannot do status, so no sleep, no paralysis, no poison, no confusion, which was very big. All of it gone. You cannot do that. Let's see here. And along with that, what you got at this point is hello, Golder Bullets. This is the Ginger Wonder. How are you doing tonight? Along with Misty Terrain, basically what you got at this point was again, the fairy typing was huge. And that boosted fairy attacks, and it made it so that dragon attacks were not as strong. Because before this, the only counter that dragon had was ice. And they started coming out with more dragon types around here. So they made it so that ice was not quite as strong, or it was a little bit harder to hit them. And ice types always had a bit of a problem with being a little bit more on the frail side. So no more were dragon types dominating at this point. And if you look back, one of the reasons that dragon types were dominating was definitely because of Dark Dragon. Alright. Dark Dragon. Hydreigon, right here. This bad boy introduced in Generation 5. As you can see, it has Dark and Dragon typing. So I would imagine that this thing pretty much dominated the metagame on Generation 5. So Hydreigon now had a solid counter in Xerneas. which Xerneas kind of ran rampant on its own. So let's go ahead and use a different Pokemon for an example. Let's say Granbull. So yeah, Granbull, one of my favorites, a very physical fairy type Pokemon, with paired with Intimidate as its ability. Again, it's just made it really great. Another cool ability here, Rattled. If it's hit by a Bug, Dark, or Ghost type, its attack goes up. Or if it's intimidated, or not its attack, excuse me, its speed goes up, so it gets faster. Now, probably the biggest mechanic out of this generation, Generation 6, would have to be Mega Evolutions. If you guys are familiar with Pokemon at all, then you know Mega Evolutions are amazing. So it gave Mega Evolutions at the expense of your item slots. No items, so you can't do any shenanigans to boost your attack or boost your defense or give yourself any berries. But you can boost all of your stats permanently for the duration of the match and just go ham on people. Changes your ability around once you do that, and certain Pokemon. Like I said, gives you a permanent stat boost, and that really helps out with being able to help you in a pinch and get you there. Now, I'm going to move on to the seventh generation, which is, of course, the Alola region. A lot of people like this one. People thought it was really refreshing to not go with the whole 8 gym structure, then go to the Elite Four, and then you have your post game. So they changed it up a little bit. Let's go to Ubers. Yeah, changed it up a little bit, introduced some more Pokemon, and then they made terrain even greater in this one. And this was showcased a lot by the Tapus. So Tapu Koko, Tapu Lele, Tapu Bulu, Tapu Fini, which those are kind of running across the meta now too. Um, I mean, as far as that's concerned, it's just made it more synonymous with the weather. So you can set up weather, you can set up terrain, bolster certain Pokemon, maybe restrict some others, make it so that you can't get sleep cast on you or get certain other status effects cast on you. Take out priority moves, which have always been there. Priority is always a really interesting thing too, because certain attacks, usually at the expense of power, can go before other attacks, or some of them, which again are perfectly fine. There are no real issues with it. Just move faster or have a higher priority than others. Um, One thing that really did get implemented in the fifth generation that unfortunately I neglected to go over was the Trick Room situation. What Trick Room would do is it switches around the speed stats, makes it so that faster Pokemon will actually go last in order, and slower Pokemon will go first. So that did a lot for competitive. Um, let's see. As far as other sorts of things that were really introduced in Gen 7, oh yeah, that's right. Z moves. How could I forget? Z moves where you can do one major, huge attack at one time at the expense of your item slot on that Pokemon. And all of a sudden, it would just basically wipe out that other Pokemon on the other side, depending on its own resistances or its own weaknesses, or if it protected or detected. That would all really depend on how much health it lost at that point, or if it was a one hit knockout. Um, so yeah, that a pretty contested mechanic, but again, it's just one of those things where some people enjoyed it, some people didn't. And now we get to the Generation 8, which is where we have Pokemon Sword and Shields. And it's on the Switch. It looks beautiful. Honestly, a lot of people don't like the textures. I think it looks really good. It's really helped realize quite a lot of the Pokemon that I grew up loving. I've played it front to back at this point, and it introduced the mechanic of Gigantamaxing, which again, fairly contested, but whenever you introduce a new mechanic as big as Megas or Z moves or Gigantamaxing, people are going to like it, people aren't going to like it. It's really cool though, because what it's done instead of Z move is certain Pokemon can get signature moves, which have signature effects to it, but mostly it's just going to be Pokemon that if they're just going to have their max attack of whatever move type that is that you have. So you get flying type. A flying type will increase the speed of all the Pokemon on your side of the field that are currently out. You have max darkness, which lowers the special defense of the other side. You have max knuckle, which increases the attack stat of all the Pokemon on your side that are currently out. So it's really done a lot as far as strategy is concerned. And the coolest thing to it is that it only lasts 3 turns. So you really have to pick and choose when you're going to use it, when not to use it. If you use it really early, you have the opportunity to kind of sweep through the other person and call out their moves and really get a huge leg up. But you can also use it too early and they will then counter it, stall you out, and then they will have theirs that they can use whenever they're ready, and they can take you out, and you have nothing to defend against it. So it really lends a lot to strategy and how you want to play it. A very, very interesting mechanic, in my opinion. Um, so that's essentially Pokemon battling in a nutshell. Um, I really hope you enjoyed this explanation. I'm going to be uploading this portion of it onto YouTube. So again, if you have any friends that they don't quite understand why you like Pokemon so much, hopefully you can link this to them and maybe they'll see it. They'll get it. They'll get a good idea of it. Thank you for watching me, the Ginger Wonder. This is our Poketalk tonight. Please feel free to like and subscribe the video and share it with your friends. I am the Ginger Wonder, found on Twitch TV, twitch.tv/the Ginger Wonder. TH3G1NG3RW0ND3R. Please come on back, and I look forward to seeing you. Bye.